Hello, students. My name is Marie Planchard, and I am Senior Director of Early Engagement at SOLIDWORKS. I'm here today with the Executive Vice President of 3D Experience Works, Gian Paolo Bassi. Gian Paolo, thank you for being with us and the students today.
Thank you very much, Marie. Very happy to be here with you.
Terrific. We are going to go on an adventure, Gian Paolo, and you are on a journey. I'd like you to share with our audience a little bit about your life's journey. So I'm going to start in Modena, Italy, where you were born, and tell us a little bit about this beautiful place in Italy.
Okay, so yes, Modena is my original hometown because now I've been living here for almost 30 years,
Wow.
But I always often go back to my hometown where I still have house, friend, relatives. So Modena is famous for several things, but the most famous one is it is where the Ferrari factory is.
Wow.
Is right on the outskirts of Modena in a little town called Maranello, which is part of. And Modena is in what they call the Motor Valley, because in Modena they also designed the Maserati cars. Not far away, always in the province of Modena, there is a specialized factory of supercars called Pagani. Is very famous by connoisseurs because they are $1 million type of cars.
You buy one.
Yeah. And not far from Modena, I would say 25 miles, we have also Lamborghini and Ducati for motorcycles.
Wow.
So basically motors, engineering and mechanical things are in the bloodstream of every Modenese, which is native of Modena.
So when you were growing up around this environment, who were the people that influenced your life, where you are today?
Okay. I would say that the one person that influenced most my future career, I would say, was my grandfather. My grandfather was a teacher in a vocational school. He was teaching auto repairs, automotive repairs, and he was the teacher that was educating all the kids that would end up into the automotive repair shops around Modena. So I would go with my grandfather to the classes, to the lab. They had an amazing lab. The school was very advanced. And very often I came home with a little gift. Could be a part of a motor. I remember the most prized one was a carburetor.
Whoa.
So I worked on that carburetor for many, many years. And they used to put all these things into a magical drawer. I call it the drawer of wonders. So it was full of these little mechanical things. The other thing is that my grandfather was passionate about motorcycles. He was a collector. So I had access to these wonderful things called motorcycles since when I was very young. And I have to say that I was driving those things underage, under, the condescent look of my mother that, kind of tolerated all of that under the watch of my grandfather.
So your mother must have been a little patient, because I know when I took a carburetor apart, there's a little oil, it's kind of messy, you're doing this in your room. Tell us a little bit about your mom, because I know she influenced your life a great deal too.
Yes, my mom was my number one source of inspiration and still is after many years, because I lost my father very young, so she was my family. We used to live with my grandfather and my grandmother as well, but my mom was my North Star, was my spirit, and it was a very good relationship, and she built everything on trust. She trusted me on everything, including driving motorcycles underage. Because she trusted me that I would not do crazy things, at least not too crazy, and she wanted to let me grow my self-esteem, my confidence. It was a lot about the confidence, because she was a teacher. She was a teacher of elementary school, specialized in teaching with children with learning disabilities. So she understood the importance of building confidence, of creating a relationship of trust with young kids. And she definitely used that methodology with me as well.
Well, I'm very grateful to your mother, your grandfather, because this educational influence, this teacher influence of what they gave you, I see when we travel together, when you talk to students and educators, it's really heartening. And from that, you end up having this knack. You know about mechanical things. You know about sort of how they're working, how you put them together, how do you take them apart, and somehow you decide, well, I think I'm going to take this and go on further to go on to engineering. Why did you choose engineering?
Well, again, I had the passion for mechanical things. I was very handy since when I was young. I had the full access to the garage. We had the garage with all the tools that you can imagine, with the collection of the motorcycles that my grandfather put together. And I just liked the environment of creating things that would work. Plus, my father was a naval engineer. So I had access to drawings, to books. It was
in his
my
library.
psyche, and my grandfather had the utmost respect for engineers. He worked with many of them, and definitely there was some sort of atmosphere that was conducive to me thinking to go in that direction, which is an area that I liked very much. Plus, there is a very good engineering school nearby my town in Bologna,
In University of Bologna, yeah.
which, by the way, is the oldest university in the Western world.
Right.
And so it was a direct connection for me.
And it was a strong school in theory and also applied, and you had a very intense curriculum there. And you get towards the end of it, you're about to graduate, and you got an opportunity. Where did you end up going?
Okay, so yes, we during my curriculum during my years at the University of Bologna, yeah, I am dating myself now, but it was at the beginning of the computer-aided design. You have to understand that I liked a lot the theory, I liked a lot the design part. I didn't like a lot of the draftsmanship about engineering because I am not a good draftsman. I don't have that artistry. So, but at the same time, the computers were coming at age, were coming up in the world of manufacturing and design. And I immediately understood that that was the direction. I fell in love with computers, in other words. And since the beginning, since when we were drawing things on those greenish Tektronix console, right?
Yes.
And I used to lock myself up in the lab to have more access to the mainframes at the time. It were the DEC, the huge digital computers, even IBM. I even programmed with perforated sheets. Can you imagine?
Right.
And so at the end of my school, I had the chance to be part of a group of students put together around my thesis advisor, and we did a startup. At the time, the terminology startup was not known. Nobody talked about startup, but we were a startup, and we built for a consortium of local factories or local companies. We built a parametric solid modeling computer-aided design tool.
Wow.
Even before PTC came on the horizon, literally. And it was probably one of the most creative parts of my experience because at the time we learned everything about a computer-aided design tool from the Windows-based pop-up screens, screen menus, from interactive menu, mouse interaction, so the user interface, the rendering, the real-time manipulation, of course, all the solid modeling technologies that we did using books written in the Rochester University. So I learned a lot about those things. We built the system that was eventually acquired by the Institute for Nuclear Physics in Italy that was participating to a project with the CERN organization in Geneva, in Switzerland, which is the major research institute for the entire Europe, especially for nuclear physics. And their goal was, among other things, was to discover the famous God's particle, okay? And to do that, they built huge detectors. They built the toroidal path underneath, underground, where they would collide high energy physics to and also detect the path of the collision to find out whether the boson Higgs, the Higgs boson, was a reality. It was predicted in theory, but never seen in experiments. The famous, it's called the God's particle, the Higgs boson. And to detect that, they would design those gigantic detectors that would plug into the toroidal path to capture the path of these particles. And they used the systems that we developed to design these, it's called the LHC, Large Hadron Colliders. And it is interesting because a few years back, I read the results of this huge experiment that lasted more than 20 years. I was part of it with this project at the beginning, but more than 20 years after, they eventually found the Higgs boson.
Yes.
And they used these Large Hadron Colliders, and they said, "Wow, look at that!"
And you were part of that. And students, what you don't realize when Gian Paolo talked about tectronics, it was a green line or a green shape on a monitor, and you had to put in XYZ coordinates to put in a point, and you draw a line, and then you put in another point. The geometry that just comes so freely today, you were at the beginning of that, the creation of the model. You know, that was a brand new concept. It did not exist.
Yeah.
So you're in all of this, you're at this amazing research institution in CERN that must have made your family so proud. And how did you get from there to the United States of America?
Okay, so I was participating into this CERN project, a part of a company in Italy that was called Italcad. That says it all in the name. It was a computer-aided design built in Italy for Italians, for Italian company. In fact, Alenia, which is a major aerospace company in Italy, was part of it. And computer vision, at the time, it was the dominant company in computer-aided design, bought this Italcad, the small little company. And the executives came to Italy and interviewed the people, the employees. I was part of them. They were asking me, what do you want to do? What are you doing? What are your interests? I explained them what I was doing and what my interests were. And they said, okay, why don't you come to Boston to do these things in our labs? And you know what? I decided on the spot. I was freshly married. I said, okay, I'll find a way to convince my wife. I did.
I'm glad.
Well, I'm glad too. But that was an on-the-spot decision, to be honest. Yeah, because, again, I've been worshipping the research done in the US on this subject since the beginning of my career, right?
Especially in this area.
Especially in the Boston area. Rochester was one of the first universities to study computer-aided design technology, right? Solid modeling, and therefore for me it was an immediate decision, and I think it was a good one, you know.
I think it was a good one too, and computer vision at that time was right up the road from where we are now in Bedford. So from computer vision, you're sitting at computer vision. What was the next step in your journey?
Okay, the next step, I moved working for computer vision in the Silicon Valley, okay, in San Jose, in California. And being in Silicon Valley, you have to experiment with startups. And I did two, right? I did two startups, always in the field of computer-aided design. And this attracted the attention of the Dassault, okay? That became a partner in these startups. And at some point, they met with me and said, Gian Paolo, okay, you are having fun with those little startups. Okay, you do interesting things, but I think it's time for you to grow up, you know, and, you know, become part of this large organization and become a professional. Well, I was already professional, but you know what I mean. Yeah. So, and then they offered me the position in no less than SOLIDWORKS. Of course, working in this field of geometric modeling, computer-aided design, SOLIDWORKS was a dream brand. And by the way, SOLIDWORKS was born in computer vision. When I was there, I knew journalistics there, right? And therefore, that was another on-the-spot decision. I said, yes, I can move. I can uproot again my family from California to Boston, and I'm glad that I did.
Yes.
So I started working for SOLIDWORKS.
I know it's a very close-knit CAD community because when I took the position here at SolidWorks, there was so many people from computer vision that I had known in my career.
Yeah.
And that's an important lesson for students. You got to make those relationships, and you keep those relationships like you have done that get you from Boston over to Silicon Valley, back to Boston. Is your wife and family traveling with you at this point?
Well, they've been following me. I've been very fortunate because my family has supported me. I've supported them as well, and I have two kids that are grown up now, and they were able to do it despite all my, moving around, and that has been good. I would say that looking back, your life is full of bifurcations, right? You have to always make decisions, but honestly, I don't regret any of them.
So Gian Paolo, you moved to Silicon Valley. What was your feeling, your experience when you were surrounded by all these startups?
Yeah, actually, Silicon Valley is a unique phenomenon that everybody in the world is trying to replicate. But the most peculiar thing about Silicon Valley is the connection between the capital and the ideas. And that is priceless. And that is the engine of, I would say, the Silicon Valley and the United States economy. So the ability to move the founding where the ideas are, and the trust that is between the investors and the founders. I think this is pretty unique. Right now, you don't see this only in Silicon Valley, but in the specific time when I moved there, it was prevalent there. The amount of energy of startup coming to life was really very, very high. But we see this happening elsewhere right now. Boston is an excellent area from that point of view. But I think, I think this probably is an advice for all the governments. I mean, you recreate this situation where you can put together capital and money capital and human capital. Magic things can happen if there is a trust, the willingness to try, to fail fast, learn fast, and if people have this type of culture, and this is the culture of the Silicon Valley. But we see this elsewhere as well.
A very interesting place. And you've certainly had a lot of great experiences. And I know sometimes I come in early in the morning or after, a flight, and you're here. You're like the lights are on. You work so many hours and you travel so far. So I'm going to get you from SolidWorks. You have this amazing brand. It's doing well, right? We have millions of students. We have hundreds of thousands of customers doing great products that we'd love to go visit and we use, right? And then you take a look with your background and you're like, we got to do more. And there's been a change for you. Even now in your career, there's been a change. So why don't you tell the students about this new change?
Yeah, well, students and everybody have to understand that the only constant in life is change. So you'd better embrace it. So yes, after 7 years as a CEO of SolidWorks, at the beginning of the year, I was asked to lead a new organization called 3D Experience Works, which is actually building on top of the SolidWorks brand and the SolidWorks strength. SolidWorks is the most successful design system in the world. With the market share that we have, nobody can argue on this statement, right? But the nature of the challenges that engineers are facing today is much and increasingly much more complicated and difficult, okay? The challenges are enormous, but also the opportunities are enormous. Look at the connectivity, internet, 5G, personalized healthcare, new source of energy, nuclear fusion. All those opportunities are a contrast on other challenges that we have, like disruption of the supply chain, the world conflict, the geopolitical instability, and therefore we need to to equip our community with more tools to do their job more effectively, okay? And therefore, to make once we used to say, we help our clients make great design happen. We did SolidWorks to do that, make great design happen. Now, to really go from the design to the design that is happening, we need much more than an amazing design tool. We need the simulation, we need governance, we need the technology to connect the supply chain, we need the technology to do better collaboration, better innovation, to capture and communicate knowledge. We need technology to go all the way into manufacturing, all connected. We want everybody to be connected, everybody always up to date, and with immediate access to all the tools and the assets that they need to make great design happen. And this is my new challenge. It starts with SolidWorks and it expands into all the domains that engineers today need to master, and especially students, the workforce of the future. They need to understand what cloud brings to the table, what platforms bring to the table, what advanced simulation, multi-physics simulation, multi-scale simulation, manufacturing, additive, subtractive, what is the connection and the trade-off, And that is what the 3D Experience World wants to bring to the marketplace.
All of this seems like a fairy tale, that you're in this perfect story. There has to have been some speed bumps on this motorcycle ride of yours.
Yeah, actually, motorcycles are designed to withstand speed bumps. So yes, speed bumps are part of the adventure. That is inevitable. And there are professional speed bumps and personal speed bumps. I would say that on the personal side, the fact that I separated from my family necessarily, right? Because I left my family and I moved, my original family, my mother, my grandmother, my grandfather, to move abroad. It was not an easy decision, and that was a big speed bump with emotional consequences. You have to put that into the equation. Professionally speaking, I've been through everything that happened in the U.S. Geopolitical, economical situation in the last 20 years, from the bubble of the burst of the internet bubble, right, where we were very much invested into internet technologies, which, by the way, was the right direction anyway, because the bubbles burst, and then the technology, the good part, what is left after the burst of the bubble is the sound technology, the good things, okay? All the way into the financial crisis of 10 years ago, not to mention 9/11. So a lot of bumps, a lot of downturns. Computer vision went through a severe layoff time.
Yeah, hostile takeover.
Exactly, there was a hostile takeover. I lived through all of this, but that did not change my plan, my overall plan. Those are speed bumps that you will necessarily and inevitably find. You have to put that part of your plan. You need to be resilient. It's part of being persistent.
And you definitely are persistent. And I know you go back home and have a good Italian dinner with your family as often as you can.
I do.
And I remember you asking the whole team to think about ways to save money. Every employee, it was every employee's responsibility during these bumps of the economy downturning. And yeah, we all had to live with that.
Yes, we do. And, to the credit of Dassault Systèmes, we have been able to manage these speed bumps very effectively and very humanly towards the employees. We never had to do layoffs or anything like that. So I think it's pretty unique.
I'm very grateful for that. And
Me too.
My family is very grateful for that. So you've had to make many changes in technology, in your career, in locations, moving your family, moving yourself, even in different types of industry or different direction, from startup to Dassault Systems, right? So what kind of advice can you give students that are at the start of their career?
Okay, that is something that I was taught since when I was a little child, okay? I think in life is important, very much important, to have a passion. So you need to have a passion, because if what you do, if what you do with a passion, you don't have to work one single day in your life. You said you see me around early in the morning, late at night. Yeah, but it's fun. It's not work. It's not really. So you need to have a passion, and then you need to have a vision attached to this passion. So how do I pursue my passion? What is the plan? What is the life plan? You put together a life plan that has to be consistent with your passion, and then you need to be persistent. That is my advice, my honest advice. This is what I did, but everything has to start with a passion, and you need to find your passion in life and pursue it with honesty, with ingenuity, and with persistence.
Well said, Gian Paolo. So students, have a passion, and thank you for being with us today.